Stimuli Acme yet again for the millionth time, and the most recent venture I did with it, I guess, was that battle between the Absolutist King and the Stimuli Acme from my short stories that obviously I did in the battle animation with the help of Stimuli, the guy who apparently his channel got taken down, but he made, I don't know really why, but he makes those battle, I hope they don't ban my channel for it. Like, I don't get it. It's a battle animation, like, it's not anything bad, but no, that sort of recreates that moment. It's pretty funny, like POV, when you have great ideas but you don't have the animation budget for it, or you don't have the patience to, the skill or the patience to do it. But no, let's look at the Stimuli Acme and how it rules your era, your life. And so let's break it down. Let's first establish the premise. The Stimuli Acme is what? It's the observational basis that people, human beings, society knows of no higher value, no higher measure in life than pleasure, their own hedonistic pleasure, right? That in itself is an observational basis. How can we prove and support that? We base our lives around it in society, like marriage, right? So you live with a person, you spend a lot of your time with that person, you base your finances around that person, like the marriage contract. So you can say, why do you do that? On a functional level, you can say it's good for the family system and for raising children. But even that ties into nature's way of inspiring reproduction. That's why it's pleasurable in the first place. So it's nature's way of inspiring reproduction. But yet you're ruled by that and you're owned by that. This is where the human ego and gratification is used to control them. Like, when animals do it, oh, it's just a normal, natural process. When people do it, oh, it's sacred, it's love, it's meant to be. Right? So we have that narcissism that, in this case, is used to control people, and obviously, because again, you think about that, like, who does that really benefit, or what does that really lead to? And that sort of forced uniformity, it's easier to control, but you can't just tell people that, like, oh, it's easier to control if you specify the Stimuli Acme to one person you see, and it's, even if you want to argue the functional base of the family system, I want to hear people say that, like, this is like a Ben Shapiro moment, like, okay, don't tell me then it's God, or don't tell me it's like something else, like it's love, it's meant to be. No, it's a functional basis. You're sacrificing the Stimuli Acme with everybody else to specify to one person because it's easier to control, and you can create a good family system out of it. Hey, Agent, how's it going? We got James Bond in the chat over here. But no, it's a situation where, again, what is the benefit? I wish I could explain that a little more simply. Like, with religion, for example, God and like it's meant to be, what is the real psychological meaning of that, right? Forget about even debating, oh, is there a God or is there not, right? The point is, the way in which both of those things are used plays into the ego gratification of people to control them in the following way. That, like, you can't just tell people, oh, we're trying to control you, right? Even if you think the end result of that control is good, like, okay, we're making laws so people don't kill each other, right? It's not about whether it's good or not. It's about where it comes from. Oh, it's just a subjective person doing that and enforcing it, and there's, subjective flaws and limits to it. That's not the point, because right then, well, then it's one subjective word against another, so that's all it takes to defy it, right? A bunch of subjective people write laws and enforce them, and then, so if you're good enough to get away with it, that validates you, or if you just disagree with it, that validates you, because it's one subjective voice versus another, or many subjective voices, but the number of people doesn't validate it, even because throughout history you've seen that go various ways, right? A number of people in World War II Germany might have thought one thing, or whatever. It's easy to control a mass of people, so that doesn't validate it. But what does happen is, again, it allows you to look at it very simply like this. It's not that society is controlling you, or it's easier to control when you're just with one person, right? Like in a relationship, versus open relationships versus any other alternative, right? It's not, but society can't just tell you, oh, it's easier to control you. They have to appeal to your own ego and gratification, be like, oh, it's love, it's meant to be, it's what you really want, right? That part is what's disturbing, because, like, you're being sort of tricked, right? It's your soulmate, it's absolute, it's meant to be. So we can break down some of the fallacies with that, but basically, that's where the incentive lies. So whenever it appeals to your ego and gratification that way, that's how you're being controlled, right? It's love, it's meant to be, it's absolute, even though, you just happen to meet in the same geographical area, and even though, like what I call the observable practice, right? It'll be posed as an absolute, like put on a pedestal, but the observable practice in everyday life is anything but absolute. So like POV Riz, like, wow, how I met your mother. You walk up to some random person on the street, use some little stupid pickup line, and then take them to dinner, and then do all this, and then you end up together, and that's how you ended up together. It's like America, what I'm describing, or where I am right now. But basically, but no, this applies to a lot of things. But the point is that you walk into a random person, you do a pickup line, and that's how you end up together, right? So that doesn't mean it's bad or you shouldn't do it, but it means it's not absolute exclusive to everything else, right? So to specify the Stimuli Acme. So that means, right, like, in other words, okay, following that same process, then 10 years down the road, somebody comes along with a better pickup line or a better dinner date or whatever, and that's how they steal them away from you and they cheat on you. And so it's kind of like you're being tricked into believing something is absolute that clearly is not absolute in how it's formed, right? The origin point fallacy. The way it came about was not absolute, right? Like something that we put on a pedestal, but yet we treat it that way anyway because we're being controlled by the ego gratification of it to say, it's love, it's soulmate, it's meant to be, right? All of that is just a code word for you're being trained like an animal by your base inherent hedonistic instinct, right? That's how people are controlled. If you took that away, now what is it that you're controlling them by? How can you get them to reproduce? How can you get them to do what you want, right? This is what I call when the absolutist calls for not preserving the Stimuli Acme unless you vouch for the state, right? Don't have children unless you vouch for the state of society. And if you did that, then there's no way to control people, because unless you're saying you're actually forcing people to have children, which that in itself is making it too obvious then that you're controlling them, right? But that makes you more vulnerable. So it's like, I'm struggling to put food on the table for the 5 kids, so I can't really question the government or think for myself, or I have to, like, who told you to have the 5 kids then, right? This is the whole crux of it, right? Like, at some point, that's what the enlightened society would do. You live Oslo in America? Cool. What state is that, actually? I don't know. When I think of Oslo, I think of Oslo August 31st, which is like Norway, I think. Yeah, it's a pretty good movie. But random movie trivia. That's the movie I used to try to trick the Akinator thing, where it guesses, like, it'll guess any character, and then I use that because it's so obscure and nobody knows about it. So I tried to do the character from that movie. I think it worked a couple times, and eventually figured it out. But yeah, it's a situation that basically, again, you're tricked into valuing that specific thing, right? Like, that's absolute, it's meant to be, it's a soulmate, right? That would be your partner. And again, it seems on the surface like a positive thing, and nobody's telling you not to do it, but it's more the absolute that is posed, like, it's meant to be, it's absolute, it's the one and only, when clearly the observable practice is, show me what part of it coming to be is absolute, right? In the origin point that would make it unique, right? You happen to go to the same school, you happen to live in the same area, happen to work in the same job, happen to be in the same geographical area. Like, you don't have the credibility to call it absolute unless you've interacted with and had experience with, like, everybody else on the planet that you could be a possible mate, attractive kind of person, or even to base your life around that is the whole point. It's like, you might think it's elevated, but it's actually kind of the opposite. They're like, it's elevated that you have high standards, so therefore you're not going to be with just anybody and like have sex with anybody. But the fact that you treat sex and that sexual relation as the highest measure is itself the trick, right? What if you just treated sex as sex, and then you treat valuing people in your life separately, so you don't base your whole life around it? So it's the irony of it, like, you sleep around with random people whenever you want, or however you feel like, or you have orgies and stuff. That means you don't respect yourself. No, actually, it means you do respect yourself. It can mean you do respect yourself, because you don't derive value and respect from sex, and you don't base your whole life around it and obsess over it. It's like sex is sex. You just do what you got to do. And then I'm in New York, like central New York. So, right, like the one person who bases their life around it would be like you get married and you're obsessed with that, versus the person who just treats it for what it is and doesn't care. So it's kind of like, who is really obsessed with it? The one who sleeps around and treats it for what it is, or the one who bases their whole life around it, lives with that person, splits their finances, like then they're that obsessed that that's what they do. And then one of the other aspects of this is just like the most important concept in all of my debates and discussions over the years, is like, because you have to understand and define society's base of value in the first place. So the thing is that, hang on a second. Okay, so that we've sort of defined what it is, right? That the highest form of value that people know is pleasure and their own inherent hedonistic desires. That's how they're controlled. So the fallacy is appeal to your ego, gratification. And it's similar with God. Like, I'll use that to the subjective, right? It's not just your word against mine or just somebody telling you what to do. It tries to elevate it to a higher level. Like, it's above human subjective discourse, and it's absolute. And it comes from God, right? To bypass accountability of being held, like, again, any random arbitrary society could do the same thing. Like, just, it's not the Russian government telling you what to do. It's not the Chinese government telling you what to do. It's God telling you what to do. That's the convenience of it, how it's used as a tool to control people. So it appeals to your ego that way. Like, in the one case, again, the hedonistic tendency, bypass critical thinking, all that. Emotion is nothing more than a rational insistence upon the self, as I always say. But the other part of it is that, like with God, is that you want the world to revolve around you and your standards, and you want it to be absolute. So it's like a nice peace of mind. It's convenient. It doesn't make it actually true, but right. So the one is trying to use a false absolute of kind of your own subjective indoctrinated state as like, oh, it's not just your morals, or it's not just your opinion, or it's not just subjective people. It's basically God is meant to be its absolute, right? So it's kind of a narcissistic thing that we like want to believe the world revolves around us and our standards. And then the Stimuli Acme is the same thing. It's not just some random person, some sexual encounter, something you can enjoy, something you can do. It's absolute. It's meant to be. It's specified. It's controlled. It's reactionary. So look at it from the outside looking in. It's like, oh, that's just a natural process. But you have to almost believe it as a defense mechanism. That's the whole irony of it. The reason why, love is like you love your partner. It's not really a positive thing in that way. It's a defense mechanism against, why is it that you're specifying the Stimuli Acme to that one person when you could be with anybody or everybody potentially else, right? Other people at the same time or instead or whatever. Hey, you're still here. How's it going? So, yeah, it's a situation. Oh, I might have to fill my gas. I chose shit. But no, it's like, how do you justify specifying the Stimuli Acme as love as a soulmate if you just treat it for what it is? There's like a defense mechanism against those options of like, there's no basis to specify it, really. Right? Just like there's no basis for authority, really. It's arbitrary. Even if you think you agree with it, you're kind of indoctrinated youth before you can think for yourself. Or even if you, choose to specify the Stimuli Acme, it's not absolute. So, again, being aware of the nature of the process is what I would say here. Like, it shouldn't be a surprise then if you get cheated on, because what is the observable basis of the relationship? you walked up to a random person, you happen to live in the same area. Like, it's not based on a criteria that is unique or absolute, right? You might try to justify it that way, but what is the criteria? Like, oh, it's just like, again, I'll kind of do the proofs of the stimuli acme here. This is when I used the whiteboard and the little pointer finger thing, and I kept tapping on it like the same. It was like, how many times do I have to explain the same thing? It was kind of funny, like the way that's turned into a meme with the stupid pointer and you keep tapping angrily at the whiteboard. But no, I'm driving, so basically I'm driving out of Syracuse and into almost towards Vermont. Like, I'm going to Queensbury. I have to do something there tomorrow, and then I have to go maybe over into Vermont. So yeah, pretty much out of the state. Although I don't actually know where it's going to take me through in order to do this. Like almost Albany, but I think it's a little north of Albany. There better be like a rest stop because I'm almost out of gas. You watch me break down. Like, I don't know. I might have to exit somewhere. But no, it's a situation. There normally are, but it might be on the other side. I don't know. Damn it. But no, what I'm saying is that the proofs of the stimuli acme, okay? So the proofs are like, again, that people base their life around the stimuli acme, like they live with a person, they, marriage, base your finance around the other person, like that's like your life goals, right? So basically it's your own hedonistic pleasure that you're doing. That's what it's based on. That's what you're basing your life around. And so that allows you to see it. One example of the proof of it. Another would be like profanity. It's one of my favorites. Most profanity has to do with sex, even if the topic of conversation, what you're thinking about, doesn't actually have to do with it. So it shows you people are so obsessed with that and can't think of any higher form of expression, whether it be positive or negative. Most insults are sexual in nature, even if the topic of conversation has nothing to do with sex. Most come on, there's got to be an exit before that. I can't go 22 miles. Like most, I can't believe I left my gas so low, dude. Huh. I mean, there was one there, but I don't know how to cross over the damn thing. But no, like most profanity has to do with it, so it shows you people can't think of any higher form of expression or value than something sexual in nature, right? So if it's an insult, you'll probably be calling somebody a sexual name or using a sexual word, or if you are saying something positive, even, you might say that too, right? Something sexual in nature. But even if you're not thinking about that, you can't, there's no higher form of expression that you know than that, right? And so it allows you to see the proof there. Most fiction has to do with it, most song lyrics have to do with it, but basically it shows you people are obsessed with it. And it doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but it's not this absolute that basically it's not this absolute that is exclusionary to everything else, or that you would base your life around it. It just is a process. But that's how people are controlled at a half-assed inherent state. So like look at it this way, okay? Pretend you have this pill that you could take, and it removes all sort of sexual pleasure or stimulation. Now, you could decide for yourself. So you could choose to do it still, or you could choose to get something out of it, but it wouldn't be like this instinctive way that you're controlled by it. Like, that's why anything of value is kind of reduced to a half-mast state so it can be controlled. You can't just freely do it. And that's the whole irony again. It's like the neutrality. You might not do it at all. You might not care. Or you might do it so much that you... right, you might do it so much that you basically sleep around freely, orgies, right? Like, so that this is like the minimalist and the absolutist both coming into play, right? You use both examples. So the absolutist would do it fully and freely, like, okay, sleep around, have orgies, do it open relationships, do it all the time, anytime, right? So that wouldn't be restrained because you're doing it fully and all the way by the same measure. It's like, would you rather have one partner or several partners? Like, it's the same thing. So, like, I better go here. But no, like, would you rather have one or many, or ever? If one is good, then two would be better. 10 would be even better. You just pretend like it's not out of gratification because you're in a controlled state where you don't have access to that. It's just kind of like the celebrity culture fallacy. Like, you'll pretend it's not a big deal, but it's a situation where that's one aspect, like how you just kind of cope with it. So for example, like, okay, I kind of lost my train of thought. It's just the fact that, you know, we've done the proofs of it. So like what I'm saying is that you're not able to see it for what it is. So if you took that pill that does it, now you can choose it, and you realize how much you're controlled by it, or pretend you're asexual, or pretend, you know, it just doesn't apply. So the assumption is that it applies and you're controlled by it and something like that, and it allows you to always be subject to it. So you're controlled on behalf of something that is assumed, right? So you're already going in with it with this preconceived framing. So you're not allowed to, well, like, the social pressure would be, you're not allowed to not do it at all and not have interest in it and not care about it, because otherwise, oh, you're meant to be controlled by it, right? So what if you just don't care? Then it'll be framed in false duality, like, oh no, they just lack the ability, they're just jealous, they're just this or that, right? Especially you pose a limmer and siphon, and I won't explain that again, but basically how it would be manifested. Or even like, for example, the trickle-down effect of it is pretty significant, because if you took that away, the main thing is the Stimuli Acme preservation is like, if you don't do that, now you're free, right? You can't control people who don't preserve the Stimuli Acme flippantly. So one thing that I'm saying is that let me try to explain it once more. Like, just, you're allowed to do it in such a way that Just how that fared on the stream, because this is always a funny thing with the Starlink, that you use it, but then you go under an overhang, like a drive-through, fast food drive-through, or in that case, like getting gas. And in that case, it'll cause it to crash or mess up the stream, right? Because you're losing internet when you lose a clear view of the sky. So I always forget that. So I filled up $30-some odd of gas. Got a couple slices of pizza. Some of this gas station pizza is actually pretty good. It's got like just the right amount of grease to it. I'm using a straw, maybe for the first time since I got some of my teeth taken out, because I was afraid. I don't know if it would still be an issue, but it's been about a month though. But yeah, we'll get back to some of the Stimuli Acme discussion. This is just a little break, mainly because I needed gas. I wasn't even thinking about it. But yeah, the Stimuli Acme proofs that we were talking about were like profanity, music, like you see it everywhere. That's what people are obsessed by. But like the thing is, it just is. It's just a part of life, but people obsess over, base their life around it, and then. Right, like if they do that, then I don't know how to explain it. Right? You see that a lot with women and how they're preconceived too. There's like a certain privileged self-righteousness that they have, whether when it comes to men or anything, like, so like it'll be framed either you should give them privilege and special treatment for just being a woman, or you're being creepy, or like, so imagine the absolutist or somebody with total measure, total true value, long form amalgam. That'll be projected instead. Oh, they must want something Stimuli Acme related. Even if it has nothing to do with that, that's all they can see. That's all they can project, right? Like this asexual sacrificing their whole life to do some amalgam theory thing. And oh no, it's going to be projected that they want the Stimuli Acme. Like, right, so that says more about them than it does about you. It's like, it could be anything. You could see everything, meaning like you're seeing everything or paying attention to everything, larger process, measure, amalgam theory, something else that you have. But they project that like you must want zero sum means, you must want Stimuli Acme, so I showed you how they define themselves. I showed you how they, you know, kind of a elitist thing, like Absolutist doesn't want anything. Absolutist focus on their goal, their measure, right, so something big picture, right? But instead, you you project again that it must be zero-sum means. What if they're minimalist? What if they're absolutist? Have excess means, whatever, sacrifice them. Or what, Stimuli Acme, what if they're asexual? It doesn't apply, they don't care, they have orgies, they have, max out open relationships, or not at all. But it shows you how insecure and possessive people are when they specify the Stimuli Acme, or when they're trained in such a way. They see it everywhere, especially where it isn't. Because where it is, always they're adequately overcompensating and, whatever. But somebody who's neutral is like, oh, they must lack the ability. Or they would do like just enough to keep up appearances and appease the thing. Appease the expectation kind of. But the thing is that that'll be projected because they don't know of anything else that people could possibly value. So it's like there's nothing else that people could possibly value, or just, or not value anything in particular, just treat everything like for what it is, basically. Right, like that wouldn't be possible, is basically the premise. So imagine somebody who sacrifices something in the face of contrivance, or seeks finality of a measure instead of reinforcing contrivance. How did those projections work then? Those same projections that are used to control people. What if you don't want anything? What if you sacrifice everything? What if everything is just a tool to put an end to that very contrivance state, even through which you had to use to get it? Right, what about that? And the way in which the Stimuli Acme takes root is kind of similar, because it's like again, I'll do the elitist thing here. Like, it shows you that, again, like, neutrality will be projected as that, like, oh, the inability to achieve. That's not that they don't want that. So either a zero-sum means, like, again, projected that that's all people care about, or that's what somebody wants. Either, like, just being neutral, or kind of not doing over-the-top performative aspects, stuff like that, is the fact that basically it makes them aware of the nature of their own. So it projects about themselves. It shows you, like, that's all they care about, or that's all they would care about. So they project it, like, that must be what someone else cares about, and also that's like all that they're worth, basically, is what they're saying. They're only worth the stimuli acme, and that's all that they care about and all they can think about, so it must be projected on the others. And then it also means that they that's how easy it would be, right, through social contrivance to achieve it. Like, so that shows you it's a subversive state too. They're like, you're competing the contents of contrivance, who can put up the best appearances or something like that. So or like, let's look at the concept here of fakeness, like the layers of fakeness. What would a person be inherently in nature versus what would a person be indoctrinated in society versus what would a person be in a social setting where they're appeasing others and aware of the influence and judgment of others, and what would they be if they're aware that they're on camera too, on top of that, like social media type incentives, right, that they're on camera or getting attention. So all of those would be different. So like, it's a level of accountability and indoctrination that's playing a role, so it's not like an inherent constant state that you have. And so yeah, there's a certain selfishness in those projections, like the stimuli, like non-neutrality is in false negative because contrivance is imbalanced, or it requires undue positive emphasis, right? And so it's kind of like, so it's an imbalance. So neutrality is a negative, and this undue overcompensation emphasis that needs to be placed is treated as a positive, or like as a default, actually. Right, so it's projected in false duality, kind of the emperor has no clothes fallacy, that right, it's your fault for not overcompensating for the process, not that it's a flawed process. Which sort of shows you, like, oh, people wouldn't be at peace with it then if they were aware of it. Right, so they have to not be aware of it. You constantly overcompensate and compete over those things. But you would think in a logical, rational state, you shouldn't need to do that. You shouldn't need to distract from it. You could just do it. You can see it for what it is and then decide, but then it wouldn't lead to the specification that you're controlled by, or you're kind of laboring to control yourself. That was pretty good. Gas station pizza. But yeah, what I'm saying is the fact that basically, right, people project based on certain things, and even it's kind of similar to appearances. Like, you're controlled by appearances. So, like, somebody who doesn't take the effort to put up appearances, they're bad because they'll be projected anything negative, or neutrality even as negative because it reveals the nature of the process, or even awareness of the is projected like it's responsible for the nature of the process, just even though it's just aware of the nature of the process. So in that sense, like, the ordinary random people would be seen as negative, not that they just reflect the larger process as negative. Or so the enemy is the random person. Oh, they're just the fact that basically you like, you don't see the big picture of it, and that allows you to be controlled by it. So, like, right, like, oh, the people who do control you, it's not that they're really better or anything's different with that. It's just that they carefully curate what they show to you, the media, etc. Themselves, they present that it's this sort of contest that you compete, and you sort of you sort of do it in a way that they compete to put up a certain appearance that you'll be controlled by. So it's the same thing. And even if you're aware of it, so like the person who doesn't feel the need to put up an appearance because they have nothing to hide and they don't care, they don't have an incentive, that's negative, and they'll be projected with all the negatives of inherent reality, human nature, that we try to deny and pretend aren't inherent. And then the ones who carefully curate things because they do have an incentive, they're trying to control you, sense of reality, whatever, they're not held accountable because they you play into that and buy into that. So it's the amount of effort to artifice something that is rewarded. So you're rewarding people. So social contrivance is similar, and the way that ties back into the Stimuli Acme is that elitist victim blame or lie. And I'll say it again, that, like, oh, why would women in society project something from neutrality or from whatever, that, oh, this person must want this to be like me, is because that's all they care about. That's all they can think about. That's what they're obsessed with. That's all they're good for. That's what they place their identity and emphasis into. They do makeup for hours, and then they try to play out innocent or whatever. They dress up. They care about all those things. So they define their whole identity and basis by that. So that's the only thing that can matter. That's the only thing of value they could have. Not that, somebody could be observing and seeing this is a human being with immense potential in their mind and, various things, and amalgam theory and a measure. No, it can't be that. Just the general appreciation for that, of the mind and the potential of people, that's so inhibited, and what a shame. It must be projected, the incentive of the Stimuli Acme. So that's all they're good for, that's all they value, that's all they think about, that's all they care about, right? They define their identity by it. That's how easy it would be, just social contrivance, some basic thing. So they have to go, they're insecure and possessive, and they have to be specified and owned by it with one person, or they have to guard themselves against the social contrivance. Otherwise, that's all it would take to specify it. Exposure and fallacies like that. And then even like that's all they care about, that's all they're worth, that's how they define themselves, and that's all it would take to basically achieve it. So it kind of shows you their own problem that way. And here's kind of a basic concept too. Like, if you were to bypass or reveal or expose contrivance, that's your fault, right? Like, you'll kind of be blamed for it. So if you somehow, you're not telling other people what to do, you're just minding your own business, or you're in an open relationship, you're having orgies, you're happy with that, whatever. But it's kind of like, it's your fault for even exposing that possibility. It has to be condemned, so people fight the cognitive dissonance of not being free themselves and being controlled, whatever. But it's more than that. It's like, it's your fault. So if I set up like a social experiment, or I try to do something that demonstrates this is all it would take to break somebody up or make them cheat on their partner, it's like, oh, it'd be my fault for demonstrating that, not the fault of the it's never the fault of the process that would disprove it, right? Because your fault for doubting the process or trying to disprove the process, not that, oh, that's all it would take. Like, whatever, some person hitting on you or something, like, nothing ever disproves the false absolute. Oh, marriage divorce rates are 50+%. It doesn't matter. Nothing disproves it. Just like with religion and God, like, nothing would disprove it. Oh, he loves people, but then people go to hell or die tragically, or he believes in moral good, but still allows people to kill each other. Okay, again, so we continue the Stimuli Acme, and let me touch on one thing here. That, like, you know, there's no ego in anything. Like, even observing something objectively, like, it doesn't do anything for you, it doesn't make a specific case. So the false rationalization that you get with it, or maybe that's one of the dumbest things you can do. You take a toll exit to, like, use the bathroom or something, and then you get back on the throughway. It's like, you just did a toll, now you have to do a toll again to get back on. Like, right, I think that maybe just what I did, but you don't notice it as much because you're, whatever. You know, it's automatic these days. But the point is that you're basically putting yourself in a position where putting yourself in a position where there's no ego in it or no incentive in it. And what sometimes is framed as the incentive, it's similar to, like, religion, I guess you can say. You can say, oh, you only say there's no God because you want to sin. But that assumes that there is, you know what I mean, that you're right. It's like, well, why would they have to worry about sinning if there isn't one, right? You're doing it from a loaded premise. Like, they wouldn't have to do that because it already isn't the case. Right, like, and by that logic, then God would be allowing them to sin anyway, like how they created them and whatever. So, like, the fact that we need human laws would indicate very obviously that there would be no God that way, or even if you say that there would be, it basically amounts to meaningless. Like, then he must just be indifferent, he doesn't care. Like, people make such loaded statements like that. Like, they can explain what God wants. Like, how would you, and then like, but then he doesn't act on it. So, like, you have all that power, but you choose not to act on it. So, like, okay, either he doesn't exist or doesn't care or is indifferent, or, you know, either way, the impact is on us to take the action. So the point is, again, there's no incentive in it. Like, so sometimes the incentive is falsely framed like that. You take the inherent reality and what people are inherently capable of, objectively, inherently, right? You take that and you basically just reduce it, right? So you reduce it to a half-assed state where you control everything, you restrict everything, you control people by their base inherent half-hiddenness and kind of tendencies, right? And so what that means is that now you have to get permission to do them again, to do this inherent natural tendencies that you would have, which might even be harmless, and it might be functionless to control them, but they're controlled just for the sake of it. Right. So you have to earn the permission back to do things that you're already inherently capable of doing. Right. And so now it's like, oh, the only reason why you wouldn't believe in God is so you can do things that you could naturally do anyway, that he evidently would have created you with the ability to do. So why do you need permission to do that? Or again, the same thing here, like, I would be making the objective observations that I'm doing that don't really make a claim and don't have an end conclusion, right? The whole point of it is, okay, you can think objectively and then decide for yourself based on your own subjective criteria or premise, or even if you're just concerned with truth and reality despite contrivance. So you might think, oh, well, the conclusion of objective thought would be, let's be in a contrived state. But that's not necessarily the case, because people don't get to that point, right? They're indoctrinated from such a point when they're young and stuff that they don't get the chance to really do that. And so like they never really do objectively think like what I'm doing now. So again, there's no incentive, but the incentive will falsely be, oh, you just don't want to do, or you contrived state. But that's true because it's not absolute, right? That contrived state is not absolute. So oh, you would be objective because you didn't want to acquiesce to the contrived state in Germany in World War II, or you didn't want to acquiesce to China right now. Like, it's the same thing. But, like, again, the specifics could be better, but what I'm saying is it's not about that specific state, because that assumes that state is absolute. Again, like, oh, you're only being objective and thinking and observing and questioning things because of something that is not perfect, that is not absolute, or even just you have a different preference, you have a different measure of all the things you could possibly do in reality. Maybe it doesn't align with that. Maybe you have, again, not even saying it's bad, not even saying, oh, it's wrong and you should do something else, but just for that individual, like, can they think and choose something different? Is that not possible? Like, again, it's the false justification of you're just doing it to justify something that you could have done anyway, right? Whether it be, oh, by God, or whether it be by some other choice, like you're only being objective and thinking critically because to justify not doing this absolute contrivance state, not that it isn't absolute and you could possibly observe or choose something else, right? Like, why would you need to do that? Where you like as if you couldn't choose something else, as if you couldn't how come the clouds look kind of nice on the stream, but they look kind of dreary to me? It's like my windshield, but you're looking through it through the windshield anyway. But no, like the cameras, that's like a good modern joke, like the camera quality or the graphics in a game are going to be better than your eyes, like, right? Like, these graphics are literally better than the real world, or better than my eyes, right? The same thing, like, oh, this camera or this, and that is true. Like, that's how, a lot of movies are made. It's like we worship artifice. We would condemn it if we saw the origin of it, like how it came to be. Like, oh, look at this meticulous thing, and they're trying to control you this way, influence you this way. But when you see the end result, you want to be fooled by it. It's the same thing with relationships, same thing with product consumption, like, instead of just holding it accountable to a standard or criteria that you have. So one of the things that you definitely want is that you want to consider that how far would it be to Albany compared to this? I'm actually kind of curious, because you would think it'd be about the same. Like, let me see. Yeah, it would be about the same. But yeah, what I'm saying is that it's a false outward position of the inherent reality. It's the false inherent contrivance response to inherent reality, like how we're indoctrinated. That's treated as absolute and default. And then it's a false inherent, or false outward inherent, like things that you can naturally do anyway. You have to justify and get permission to do them, not that you have to justify why somebody shouldn't be able to do them, right? You have to justify it in the other way. And so now, one of the elements with the Stimuli Acme is the fact that you're putting yourself in a position where, well, again, getting back to that, like, you have to justify it, so that would be like, oh, that's why you're objectively observing something. So there's no ego in it, there's no incentive in it. And in fact, it's considered kind of, in my short stories, the one character who does that is like, it's almost negative that it's necessary. So it's kind of like, they would resent that a little bit. That like, not only is it not incentivized or any ego that they get from it, but it's actually annoying to them that like this should have already been done for all the technology and achievement we have. People should already do this. They should critically think. They should be objective. It shouldn't be at odds with the life that they're living. It shouldn't require them not to think in the sense of reality. It shouldn't be that way. So whatever the state is doesn't matter. That's secondary. So you're letting the machination, overcompensation, technology, convenience, and relative comforts, you're letting that supersede your thought. So you're using that as a bread and circuses, an elevated bread and circuses argument, like as an excuse for thinking or a reason not to think, because you got to have mass zero-sum functionalism only to do these overcompensations that you don't really need. There's more about distraction, overcompensation than qualifying in the first place, consistent measure, right, thinking objectively. So again, it's never telling you what to do. It's observing, right, the contradictions with the mass scale that you're controlled into. Really the lowest common denominator response. And so what that means is that basically you if you're aware of the artifice of a process, that makes you able to exploit or manipulate it or possibly reveal it. But what I'm saying is that when you observe something objectively, right, there doesn't have to be an incentive with it. It's more like that there's a nursing room in the service area. So what does that mean? Like, what if somebody's dying, they'll give you medical care? Like, why is that a thing that's being advertised? Like, it's cool that they have it, but I don't really get it. But it's a situation where neutrality is a false negative or an outward, the inherent natural state as an. And again, it doesn't mean that saying whether it's good or bad, but it's just the dishonesty of like revisionist history. It's not that, oh, that's how you inherently are, and then now we can choose to do something different, and then you'll think about that yourself. Instead, it's no, the human beings are inherently how we are trained to be in society. So just go along with it, and if you do something different, you're the one doing something outward, right? So you don't even think about it. But it's a situation where I always see these online, like when I look up like what's open 24 hours, Apple Green or some shit. But I've never been to one, I don't think. So I guess they're only in these rest stops because I've never seen them anywhere else. They have some of the goofiest things in some of these rest stops too, like. I don't know. Alright, so the thing is that I don't know. trying to tie that back into the stimuli Acme in this way, like people are like controlled by the inherent hedonistic tendency. There's no higher measure of work. Is gratified. So like whenever something's posed as a false absolute, like kind of lofty, all that kind of emphasis, it's just so that it can be controlled, and so you can be controlled by it. Basically, that's the way that it works. And so like the unconditional nature of somebody objective is kind of interesting sometimes. Like they just wouldn't enter into the social contrivance subversive nature because everything's artificial, everything's curated, so it requires that preconceived basis of like only under that premise is it the fact that you've already been trained and indoctrinated by society, only under that premise. But there's multiple flaws with that. That assumes your intent. Maybe you just choose something different. You want something different. Again, whether harmless, functionless, or maybe you're just better by the same measure. Maybe you don't need that restriction because you already wouldn't do that or whatever. But also it's like it assumes the intent and it takes the choice out of your hands. And so it allows you to the reactionary basis, so there'd be no credibility. So it's kind of like the neutral objective basis of you would be sacrificing yourself and any sort of benefits you can get from contrivance, right? So it's like you don't have any credibility, but then people would compete to create this kind of false hierarchy, and it's like, but they don't have any credibility either. Nobody does, because even on a kind of fake meritocracy basis, it's inconsistent. Even if that was true, again, there's a lot of assumptions with that. That like, what if you just want less? What if you're a minimalist? What if you don't care? What if you're self-sufficient? So it's a way to still force that level of control because you don't have anything else going on in your mind, and so right, that's one aspect. And then is the fact that relate that back to the stimuli Acme again, is like it's only under the contrived, like sort of already preconceived framing that you have that would allow you to consider it. Right, so that's one issue. It's just kind of, it's the forced nature of it, right? So objectivity wouldn't be making a claim. It would just be observing the objective reality. You can decide from there. your own measure. There'd be variance. This is basically calling people dumb and stupid, that they can't control themselves, they can't think for themselves. I keep forgetting to charge my Bluetooth headphones. It's kind of annoying because I want to either I could react to stuff. I want to see maybe that Send Help movie. I had reacted to The Housemaid, and that was kind of fun. Even though it was a bad movie, I got kind of a little into it and whatever. So we should start doing that. Or maybe I should do it like if I'm parked, if I have time, I'll just sit in my car and do it instead of always having to computer maybe like. That would be an interesting thing, like when you travel, like you just do Ubers along the way with like a destination. So it's like, okay, I want to do one, it won't work out like that, but like, I want to do one Uber after another, and that'll take me from where I'm at to where I'm going anyway. But that's not really how it's going to work. So, but that's the thing, sometimes with objectivity, like objectivity is boring. It'll seem, like obvious, but it always debunks the false absolute that would be forced on other people. Because that's the thing, a contrivance state will treat itself as absolute and insist upon it to other people. Whereas neutrality or objectivity or absolutism will not do that. It'll do what it's doing, but it won't tell other people what to do. But because of that, then it'll be infringed. Like it'll be victim to that influence of those who do insist upon themselves. So that's kind of what society rewards, is kind of like this the ones full of sound and fury signifying nothing kind of a mentality is rewarded, because it's like the one whose ignorance is bliss, and they're loud and they're egotistical and take pride and they care about appearances and they appeal to the ego of others, and they kind of take things by force or embellish and stuff. Those people who are like sort of self-righteous and, oh look, there's this God and he's telling us to do the crusades and whatever, right? Those pretenses are used. So the people doing that get rewarded, or they end up dictating society. The people selfish and greedy and ignorant and egotistical enough to do that. Whereas those who are thinkers and objective and uncertain and willing to realize that human beings don't have all the answers, and realize, not outwardly insisting and not telling other people what to do, those people get, kind of forgotten about or overshadowed because they fall victim to the ones who do outwardly insist. So it's kind of the issue of it's kind of the issue of that duality of like, you're humble enough or neutral enough or not incentivized enough to, you don't want anything, you're willing to sacrifice, you're a minimalist, you don't want anything, and you are open-minded, you're objective, you know that people are ignorant, you see the reality of it, you're willing to question things, you're willing to be open-minded, versus the other one. So because you do that, you'll be associated with that, like, oh, this person's confused or unsure or stupid or something, but they're willing to actually see reality objectively, instead of the other person who is going to be egotistical and ignorant and kind of insist upon it. So it's not that, again, like the emperor has no clothes fallacy, it's not that the person being objective lacks the ability to see that absolute thing, it's that it's not absolute. And so because they won't insist upon it or won't use it as a pretense for their own self-interest or to insist upon something, because they are objective and more tame, basically, that's a bad thing, and it won't be rewarded by contrivance. And then the people who do outwardly insist will be rewarded. So it's kind of like the rule by omission protocol, like people are trained like animals and they kind of almost want that, they want you to be artificial and kind of appeal to their ego so you can control them. They treat how they're controlled as a necessary overcompensation or as an absolute that they desire, and so that's like the artifice of the middle class or the mass majority of the society is kind of like they'll play dumb or they are dumb, but they benefit from things that are overextended, like, oh, we're sucking dry a third world country, but you're fine with that, getting clothes from child labor. You don't want to be aware of it, but you kind of are deep down. You still want to benefit from it. Right, so the same pretenses used to control you are not applied elsewhere or consistently, and it allows you to So again, in a similar way, you're controlled by a lot of things. Like, you want the artificial thing, whereas the absolutist remove the need as a means to an end, finality. So it's like this concession to a non-value subversive state that requires constant overcompensation, which might seem to be positive, but it's necessary by overextension. It's already set in place before you were born, before you had a choice. So you kind of, here's how we overcompensate for this existing contrivance state. But at no point do you seek finality with that. They're like, okay, now you choose something different, self-actualize from the inherent-based state, remove the need, whatever the case may be. And so, you never do that. And the reason why is because you're not really thinking for yourself. And so it's an endless reinforcement of whatever established state is already there. So let me do a little more. I should have segments, right? I shouldn't just do this all non-stop, because then it gets a little tiring. But I'm just dumb that I haven't charged that Bluetooth app. Even just for my own sake, I'd like to listen to something. Or like, what if I just let it run and, okay, let me react to this. Tutorial Riz. Hey, excuse me, could I sit here? Sure, yeah. Sigma, Alphas, Gooners. Oh god, he's watching a video. But it's like, like, and this is a relevant topic too, like, it's seen as like this big deal, right, for positive or for the negative. So like people are constantly interested or surprised by or amazed by or offended by things that have to do with the stimuli acme, like, oh, picking up chicks is an art, and it's this, like, but if everybody's self-aware, then that wouldn't matter, it wouldn't work, because it's like, right, oh, it'll bypass your critical thinking, but you're conceding it's a non-value subversive state, but then you treat it like it's an absolute to specify it anyway. So it's kind of contradictory in the form and the observable practice of it, right? But yet you let it work. So again, there's always this is where the stimuli acme preservation comes in. There's always a mass number of people, so there's an adequate amount to fool and be controlled, right? So that's what authority always wants. Just give us more people, because then there's always going to be enough of them to just go along mindlessly with anything, like, right, so it doesn't matter about objectivity or thought, like, there's always a lower standard, they'll just do it anyway, they'll just go along with it. So it's a situation where, you're basically able to be constantly surprised by this. Oh, this is an absolute, and then you're constantly surprised or amused by how it's not, and you're constantly struggling with that. So you can do that if you want, but at least be aware of the nature of the process, and then that saves all the trouble of, like, it's a self-created conflict of contrivance state that you're doing, because the conflict of contrivance is that which you deal with when a false absolute is posed, and then you treat something as though it's absolute when it isn't. It's the conflict that you face then of, like, dealing with the fact that it isn't, even though you're still treating it like it is. Like, so all the signs that you see, all the, so you find it humorous as like a defense mechanism, all the other aspects here, like, whatever. So the point is that you're constantly surprised by it, even though that just reveals, it's not an absolute process. So what does that mean? Like, what's the conclusion? You can still treat it like it is one, but then be aware of the consequence. So if you get divorced, or if they cheat on you, or if something like that happens, it's not a surprise, because it was never absolute to begin with. You might want it to be, you might want to pretend it to be, so it shouldn't surprise you, and you also can't outwardly insist that upon other people. So you can still do it, but you should be aware of the nature of the process, and then it wouldn't come as a surprise to you, all the pitfalls of it that you're kind of facing. So yeah, even like a lot of the things that are condemned in society, like booting, whatever I'll call it that, I guess now, is sort of removing the need for it, removing the distraction of it. So, like, to not do it, not have sex at all ever, or not even do the self-pleasure, right? That would be one option. Another option would be that you could take care of it yourself, right? Remove the need, distraction, whatever. But the reason why it's condemned to do that is because it's too much freedom. That's really the issue, right? Then that removes the need for other people. It's like kind of thinking, right? Anything anybody else could say to you, you could think to yourself. So why do you need other people then? It's the same thing, stimuli acme. If you remove the need that way, why do you need other people? So society wants you to be controlled and reliant on them, but then, your imagination might be better than what is actually in front of you. Or again, even like poly favoritism, entertainment, escapism, technology is kind of more unconditional, like, it's always there for you versus what's not. So there's this subversive embracing of human behavior, like that makes it better, like our flaws or whatever, right? This romanticization of people just because they're people. The thing is that there'd be no basis to outwardly insist. That's number one. And then the other aspect is the fact that it's basically the fact that again, like, you're constantly surprised by it, you constantly see the conflict or contrivance, constantly coping with that. Oh yeah, like, even free, anything that's free and self-sufficient is condemned. So you can't just relieve the stimuli acme by yourself. What if you were living alone on a deserted island, you know, you're stranded or something? You might do that, or you might not do anything, but, like, you know, so it's condemned just because, oh, you're not reliant on the collective, so now you're free, you can do whatever you want. But that's somehow a bad thing, or, like, again, false duality projection. So that's society's incentive, is to control you by it, to take some inherent tendency or nature of yours and control you by it instead of letting you be free. And so that's what the absolutists would treat a lot of those things as sort of a nuisance, or just something to be removed. Remove the need for it instead of insisting upon it, and defining yourself by it, taking gratification in it. So people want to be controlled, though, by their own egos that way. That's kind of how they're trained. That's ruled by omission protocol. You'll never be free. You'll never remove the need, right? It's the bread and circuses machination process, which would even be fine, but it's like you don't really allow other people to do that either. Yeah, let's see what are the attractions in some of these towns. Mohawk Valley Visitor Center, Erie Canal Cruises. Yeah, which of course will be seasonal because the lake will be literally frozen otherwise. But no, it's a situation where you basically, I wonder if you could, like, walk on a construction site like that, like, after hours where nobody's there, and just, like, walk around and fuck her. Like, not that I would do it, but I'm just saying, would anybody really be there? Would they really care? Like, you could say there's cameras or something. It's the sort of thing where they almost just wouldn't even notice. But no, like, a lot of fallacies to do with, like, means validation in society. Like, oh, like, they've done all this, but, like, oh, you could do that too if you just, like, took something by force, or you had all these resources and means. Like, it doesn't really validate you necessarily because the process isn't absolute. When the whole origin point basis is, oh, like, people took things by force, like, that's how it happens everywhere, but it's like that doesn't validate them really. It's just that house looks like a landmark itself. I kind of want to see that. How the fuck would you even get there, though? So, one thing that I'll say is that, again, anything that would make you self-sufficient. It's like, oh, you eat one meal a day and you pick berries in the woods, and that's somehow a bad thing, even though it's not a harm to anybody, right? Because it's too free. So that would be condemned. Like, oh, look at this person not wearing fancy clothes in society, or look at the, so, like, it's projecting that they should do things that they don't want or don't need. That's number one. Number two is, like, something that, again, where you just remove the need for something, like, again, relieving the stimuli acme instead of obsessing over it, so you can't be controlled by it. So again, society wants you to be reliant on their overextended monopoly on other people, even if you don't want or need things that result from it. So again, you can't relieve the stimuli acme because, oh, you have to be controlled by it. That's why it's condemned. Or even though, again, doing it doesn't hurt anybody, it just hurts the control that society has over you, so that's condemned. Or like a sense of reality fallacy. And then it's a sense of reality fallacy, and it's also, it shows you like art value is arbitrary in the sense that, subjective and just preconceived collective basis. But like, for example, somebody seems more attractive because they're a celebrity or because of cult of personality than they otherwise would be. If you saw Caitlin Clark or somebody walking down the street, you might not even, normally, you might not even notice them. You see people like that every day. Not even bashing her, I'm just saying there's a certain celebrity emphasis that, that makes them more valuable. So you're more exposed to them and stuff like that too. Things that could apply to anybody, social contrivance, reinforcing and myopic aspects. But so you're never getting to finality with anything. You're never getting to a conclusion, an outcome, larger process. You're always doing everything at half-mast state. And the reason why is because anything that would make you free or remove the need. So again, you could relieve the stimuli acme yourself without hurting anybody and with minimal effort, right? But yet that's condemned because it makes you too free. Or you could live a minimalistic lifestyle, but that's condemned because it's too free, even though you wouldn't be hurting anybody or consuming very little, obviously. It's the same environmental fallacies used to control people at half-mast. It's well, that would be very good for the environment, what you're doing, but you're sacrificing all this modern technology, but somehow, that's not allowed, you can't do it like that. Okay, let me pose that. If you really care about the environment, let's go back to living how people did before the Industrial Revolution, stuff like that. But then there wouldn't be so many people in the first place. So it's a self-created problem of overextension and preserving the stimuli acme. So the thing is that, there's a basic cognitive dissonance that I always talk about too, like the violation that people have in society. Your mind is violated when you're young, it bypasses your critical thinking. It's like being brainwashed, basically. So even if you think the result is good or you're adequately overcompensated, it's still something everybody should have cognitive dissonance over and self-actualize from an inherent base state and neutralize, equalize, and also it allows you to, it's not about the state or the overcompensation, it's about the unqualified nature of doing that in the first place. And so, right, that it was never justified, right? So here's the thing, is that, again, it's a net negative. You'd say oh, well, at least you have some bread and circuses overcompensation, but there's always that cognitive dissonance of now they'll call it, mental illness or something, but is the standard and true value versus the overcompensative, non-basic, self-gratifying contrivance. So the objective measure or basis to it, and a big part of that is choice, rather than struggling to achieve things again, that's the trap of modern society. You'll struggle to achieve things that you don't even want, right? Zero-sum means overextension, overcompensate. Maybe you don't even want those things. You definitely don't need those things. So you're struggling to achieve things you don't want. You're being controlled by things you don't need, right? So you shouldn't even be able to make that choice for yourself. Who can make that choice for you? You're allowed to drink and smoke, but you're not allowed to live a minimalistic lifestyle? How? And then one of the other aspects here that I was discussing is the fact that this is a pretty scenic route. I think this is a little different than the one I took to Albany, or maybe not. No, I think it, I don't know. But it kind of would be the same. Like, there'll be like a split off, or it'll go up one way, which was kind of where I was going at Albany. Like, it almost stop at Albany, I guess, again. Like, I didn't do anything interesting there the last time, though. Like, from your, I drove through, but I didn't get, like, a good, I don't know what to really do from the streaming perspective of, like, I'm showing off. It'll be cool in the clips, like, I'm doing these shorts now and stuff, to show off all these different places, but I'm doing it almost like as a POV kind of joke thing, like, I'm your Uber driver or something, like, whatever, and I'm explaining these things. So that is kind of how it looks, like you're from the passenger point of view. Right. But remember, things are condemned because they're too free. That's basically what it is. Right, it's condemned because it's too free. You could relieve the stimuli acme without hurting anybody and without needing anybody, but that's bad because, you can't be controlled then based on the stimuli acme and have it specified and whatever, even though it's harmless. And then you're not allowed to live a minimalistic lifestyle because, that's, whatever. It'll somehow be condemned because you have to be controlled by this monopoly over nature by big corporations and stuff like that. That's why I say it's a net negative. Like, the world is your oyster. Like, all resources everywhere would be free to everybody. So why do you have to pay for water? Why do you have to, make concessions? It's kind of like, well, at least our rulers in this corporate modern day are nice, or they give us little treats and bread and circuses, but it doesn't matter because pretend, okay, the world is a village of 100. Now everybody is a king, everybody's emperor to some extent. Like, you have so many resources, so much stuff out there. So it doesn't matter because you're looking at a net positive, not a net negative. Like, it could be worse, or at least this. It's more about an inherent qualified state. Like, none of that is really rationalizing that inherent monopoly over nature that's taken before, you can even choose for yourself, do anything for yourself. So, so it's not about whether it's a good thing, like, this monopoly is nice about it, or giving us bread and circuses, but, like, people don't want to be made too aware of what they're controlled by, but that's basically what it is, like, so you take that inherent world that is free to all, nature itself, abundant resource for everybody, and you ruin it in 2 or 3 ways. So that's why it's a net negative. It doesn't matter how overcompensated the state seems to be. You take that inherent nature that's abundant for everybody, even without all the technology. Again, technology often is self-fulfilling and defeating. Like, you only need a lot of that technology because of how many people there are. Sure, you could just say some of it's a convenience, but it's not really necessary, and a lot of the supposed need, like running water. Well, there's plenty of water, but now you let these big corporations monopolize it and pollute it, and you need running water only because there's a mass number of people. What if the world was a village of 100? What if you have this little community, this small, you wouldn't need that, and so you're kind of creating the problem. So number one is you take that beautiful world that's free to all, world is a village of 100 concept, and you flood it with so many people, right? You preserve the stimuli acme so recklessly that now there's so many people that now you've ruined that. Now it's like, oh, we're struggling to do something, but like, you didn't have to have that many kids. You didn't have to preserve the stimuli acme like that. That's what the absolutists would not do. The absolutists would, would be very reticent to do that. And so that's the point, is like, unless you vouch for the state, and so that's a self-created problem. So now you have to be inhibited and sacrifice on behalf of the number of people. Like, you should be nice to other people and sacrifice this and that for the sake of a collective mass of people. Okay, but when that collective mass is so big, and you didn't create it, and you didn't vouch for it, and it keeps getting bigger, and you have to sacrifice more the bigger it gets, even though you'd say, oh, well, in reverse, it overcompensates with the machination process and technology that you get from that, but it's still a net negative, because a lot of that you wouldn't need, or a lot of that, again, is only an overcompensation for that, and it could be a choice. So that's why you wouldn't vouch for the population. Like, you value people, but you don't value that they've been reduced to such an overextended number and state, because it's like, you could just say, well, you didn't create that many people, so, and you wouldn't have, so it's not your fault, and so you don't take responsibility basically for it. So one of the things with that discussion too is the fact that basically regardless of how it's overcompensated for, you ruin the inherent nature that way. You ruin it by, again, overextending so many people. That's a self-created problem. Even if you want to argue the benefit, again, it's a net negative, because, it's a minimalistic opportunity. Like, you wouldn't need all those things, so you created the need by the number of people. And then number two is, you've also allowed nature itself to be monopolized by corporations, etc., often in the name of serving that same collective mass of people. Otherwise, it wouldn't be necessary. Everything could just be free to all, right? Because there'd be plenty for everyone, and it would be like, again, the world is a village of 100, so I don't always mean that literally, but like, relatively, like, the population is such that it seems to create the justification for it. But the problem with that is, you'll always reinforce the state that no matter what state you're in, you'll always just go along with it. Right, so you use that overextended state already that people have created in the past, that you don't really have responsibility for, that you could even actively choose not to preserve the stimuli acme. You use that to rationalize it all the more endlessly, but instead of okay, don't take responsibility for it. You didn't choose it. You didn't create it. in 720p. And like I keep forgetting, I keep saying it, but then I clean the inside of my windshield, so it maybe makes the view better for you. You can see those spots. They don't seem as visible on stream as they do to me, but you might think, oh, it's the outside, but it's not. Oh shit. So yeah, let's recap a little better. I don't even feel like it. Whatever. It was a good session. I was maybe a little tired. We covered a lot of ground, discussing the stimuli for the millionth time. I need that little whiteboard with the pointer. Let me try that, like where I just drive. So I'm going to listen to some music. I'm going to mute the mic and just drive.